Coming to you from the TheEoNProject studios, overlooking the vast, pristine green acreage of Primrose Village. Greetings from this wooded gem of the Blackstone Valley. You're listening to Experts of Nothing with Mike and Jay. Hola!
I'm still impressed by that opening.
Oh, thanks. You know, it's good to have power back.
You know, well, we went a while without a show.
We
and
did.
It's not our fault.
We did. We had that very rare Bombo Genesis, which is
like
a convergence of storms coming up here,
Genesis.
coming out of nowhere.
It sounds like an album by Phil Collins.
Oh,
Bombo Genesis.
not Peter Gabriel, the original lead singer of Genesis?
What if it was a confluence of Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually had a dream the other night that Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel were in the dream.
What?
Yes.
This is amazing.
Yes, and
That was completely
I was
random.
sitting at a bar, and Phil Collins was singing karaoke.
He seems like a good dude.
and
Phil
Peter
Collins.
Gabriel walked in,
Peter Gabriel seems like a dick.
and he was pissed. He's
Yeah?
like, why is he singing Genesis songs? And they got into a fight in the bar. It was crazy.
Karaoke, there's open license. You can sing whatever you want.
That's true.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Eon Project.
Welcome again.
And this is our third episode in our new studios.
Here we are. We're back in the new studio, and
Is it studio or studios? Like if there's more than one?
no, this is
This is only one, so it's
this
one.
is the studio.
It's the studio.
Yeah, so I'm doing.
Studio.
Oh, full circle.
See what I did there?
So we're doing a little work here at the studio. You know, I'm renovating the bathroom
Oh.
here, and I bought a new toilet for the bathroom.
Oh, fixing a toilet is hard.
And you know what?
Replacing a toilet.
You know what it says on the box of the toilet?
I don't.
It says luxury height
Ooh, luxury.
on the toilet. What does that mean?
It
When
means
comes
your
to a
feet
toilet?
don't go numb when you sit down on it.
Oh,
You know how you're on the toilet?
Yeah.
Maybe you're reading the book of Genesis, and you're in there for a while. Again, Genesis.
Yes, yep.
And you're in there for a while, and then your feet go numb,
it does happen.
and you get those red marks on your knees.
So do you think it's lower or higher than a normal toilet?
I would say higher.
Yeah,
Yeah, if it's too low, that's not luxury.
I haven't tested it out yet. but we'll
Luxury
have to
is
try it.
high.
Yeah.
Well, on last week's episode, well, not last week, the last episode we did was about Halloween. We talked about Halloween traditions.
That's true.
And horror movies and everything all related to Halloween. And it was a pretty good show, I thought.
How was your Halloween, by the way?
Uneventful.
Really?
Uneventful. You know, the kids have these, I have multiple children, and they get all excited about Halloween, and they talk about it for weeks and weeks
Yes.
ahead of it. The night comes, and they're all excited, and you go out there for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then they're like, I want to go home.
Yep, they're tired. They want to come back.
They don't want to. They want to eat all their
There's
candy.
more houses, more candy to get.
No.
So I did do the Milk Dud Challenge.
Oh, you did?
I successfully managed to insert 72 Milk Duds in my mouth
That's a lot of milk.
without choking
Wow.
to death. I did choke slightly, but not.
Did you videotape this? And
No, I didn't. But I
you
started to
should've.
drool caramel and chocolate everywhere.
It's probably good that you didn't videotape it. Because
And,
if you would have passed away, that would have been bad.
I was able to hold it down. It was delicious.
Oh, good for you. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? In the theme of the Halloweens, well, before I want to talk, I want to talk about something about kind of a corollary
Oh.
to last episode.
That's a good word.
Yes, but before we do that, let's tease today's show.
Let's do it.
So today we're going to be talking about a very infamous case from many, many years ago, but it's still it's creepy as hell to this day, and that's the Villlisca axe murders,
That's right.
which took place as I said, soon after the turn of the century.
Actually, believe it or not, it does have some. It has some slight parallels to the Amityville case, and we'll talk more
correct.
about that as we go along.
It surely does. But before we get into the Villlisca axe murder case, I want to talk to you about. We talked about horror movies last show,
We did a little bit. Yep.
and I had a horror movie experience that I want to discuss with you.
Let's hear it.
So I was. You've probably heard of this. There's a movie, a very famous movie came out last year. It's called Get Out.
I hadn't heard of it until you mentioned it.
Okay, it was a movie called Get Out. It's supposed to be a horror movie or some sort of thriller. And let me tell you something. Every single person you ever talk to, in person or here on the radio or reviews on Facebook, everyone loved this movie. Everybody.
Okay.
Universally loved by everyone.
Yeah.
It's groundbreaking. It's something that's avant-garde and something that changes the face of horror forever. So I decided to watch it.
So you're going in there with high expectations.
The
then.
highest. Great expectations.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Which is a literary reference
Yep.
because we talk all educated. So I go in there with high expectations. I watch Get Out. I actually made an event out of it. I was find myself alone in my home, which very seldomly happens.
Did you have clothes on?
I did have clothes on.
All right.
And it was a dark setting. And I set the anyway. I started the movie. That movie was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
Really?
And supposedly. I'm not even joking, the hyperbole on some people, but they said that this is the greatest movie of the year. Should win Best Picture.
Now, where do you think this is coming from? Now,
I
I know nothing about the movie, so where do you think it stems
I don't
from?
know. And it was directed by Jordan Peele, who was of Key and Peele.
Oh, that's why.
I like Key and Peele.
That's why.
But, yeah. So there's, and I don't know if it's, you know how there's a phenomenon today, and that's if some people think that they should like it, then everybody likes it.
Right.
And if you're a dissenting voice, then you're somehow something wrong with you.
Right. But the Peele guy is, he's hip.
Yeah.
He's all the kids love him.
Yes.
He does the comedy. So for him to do a horror movie was probably outside the box for him, maybe.
And you know what it reminded me of? When you're watching the movie, and I'm not going to give it away because it is still, it's not really a mystery type movie. It's a thriller. But it looks like an episode of The Twilight Zone, or it's a show that you've seen before. Like, it seems like everything is familiar to you. You've seen this before.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, no, you can't see anything coming, and it's it's not suspenseful at all. You see everything coming a mile away. Stereotypes abound within this film. I give it 3 thumbs down.
So I saw an equally horrid picture last night.
Oh.
And I actually, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I got about 20 to 25 minutes into it.
Oh.
And I couldn't take it any longer.
Oh, yeah?
So it had a big name star in it. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name's Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
And
I have heard of Tom Cruise.
It's his latest Jack Reacher film, the sequel.
I saw a movie called Jack Reacher once, and it was a pornography.
Oh, no, that was Jack Reach Around.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, Jack Reacher, not good, horrible acting. And finally, for the first time ever, I noticed that Tom Cruise is really starting to show his age.
Yeah.
He seemed like an ageless wonder.
Is he in his 50s?
Oh, he's got to be in his mid to late 50s, no?
Yeah, you would think so.
But no, it wasn't good. It's almost like the directors or the makers of the film decided to do the complete opposite of what would happen in real life. And it's so outlandish. And it has a military theme, so I kind of picked those movies apart a little bit more than others.
Yeah.
And those scenes were unrealistic. They were bumbling around. It was ridiculous.
But you didn't see the whole movie. You turned it off.
I didn't, because I got severe diarrhea from from watching it. It caused some sort of strange reaction within my body.
You should go to your doctor and tell you that a movie caused diarrhea.
I ran to the bathroom and turned it off. I left a scathing review on Amazon as well, too.
I wonder if it's going to make it to Tom Cruise himself.
That would be cool.
I wonder if he's going to be concerned with what Jay had
Maybe
to
he'll
say.
come into the studio.
That would be cool.
We can discuss it.
You know what? And actually, this leads me to my next rant, brief rant. So on the way over here, I'm listening to the radio. And this is something that has bothered me for a long time. So they give away these, they have these radio contests. So, you win $100. And like that's not really that much money these days. But on the way over here, I heard that they're having a contest where you can meet celebrities.
Oh.
What is the point of a meet and greet with celebrities? I don't understand it. Like, what are you supposed to talk about? Well, what do you think they want to talk to you?
You meet them, you see them, you
What's
take a
the point of
selfie
that?
with them.
What is the point?
So
you're friends now?
Look at me. I met Barry Manilow.
You hang out with him now? You're buddies?
Yep.
He doesn't care who you are.
No, he doesn't.
He could care less if you get hit by a bus on your way out of the venue.
No, he couldn't
He
care
doesn't
less.
care. So, to me, that would be... I would refuse the prize. If I won, I would refuse the prize. Let's say, for instance, you won a contest, right? And the contest was you get to meet Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh.
What would you do? Would you go do that?
We'd probably talk about Jumpin' Jack Flash. What a great movie that was in the 80s.
You think they care? They don't want to be there. They don't want to talk to you.
No.
So I don't understand.
Sister Act.
It'd be incredibly awkward, I think.
Sister Act 2. We could redo some of the musical numbers. That would be awesome.
No celebrity. I've met celebrities before, tangentially.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big word.
And in certain circumstances, I've never been impressed by a celebrity. Never.
No.
They're just normal folk. Actually, kind of snooty a lot of times.
A lot of times.
And it's just not something that I'm interested in.
Well, we're going to get into the Villlisca axe murders right now, but just a quick second before we do, about halfway through the show, we're going to try to get Frank from the Door Store on the phone.
Oh, Frank, yeah.
Frank, he did the one commercial with us, and he had a huge
former
catastrophe.
sponsor, yeah.
The Door Store, it's comprised entirely of wood.
Sure.
And it burned to the ground.
Goes up like a matchstick.
So we're going to try to get him on the line and get an update from Frank, see where he's at, see how he's doing. He hurt himself in the fire.
Oh, no.
And we'll get him on the horn.
Hopefully Frank is okay.
All right, so let's set the scene.
Let's set it.
Small town, Villlisca, Iowa.
It just sounds creepy. Villlisca.
Villlisca is actually, it originates from an Indian word, Villlisca, meaning evil spirit.
Wow, so you live in a town called Evil Spirit.
That's right.
That sounds foreboding.
So I don't know if you've ever been to Iowa.
I've never been to Iowa.
I haven't either, but it's a great state, I hear.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of Indiana, which I've been to many a time.
Yeah.
Where, flat plains, lots of cornfields.
Iowa. What's in Iowa?
Yeah, corn.
What do they do there?
They shuck.
They shuck
They
corn?
grow.
I wonder if they throw the corn at each other. Like some sort of some sort of game of tag.
That would be
corn
fun.
tag.
So Villlisca, Iowa, in the early 1900s, it was a little town of about 2,500 residents. So there weren't really a whole lot of people there. I think it was like 4 or 5, 6 square miles. It was a small town, and it's located in Montgomery County, Iowa. If anybody knows where that is.
No one knows where that is.
An interesting historical side note, though: during World War II, Montgomery County, Iowa, lost more men per capita than any other county in America.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is interesting.
Yeah. However,
They were probably all in the same boat.
that could have been.
Anyway.
This is like the Sullivan brothers.
Yeah, everybody was on the same ship.
So this is overshadowed, unfortunately, by the horrific mass murder that occurred in the year 1912.
1912.
So the house where these axe murders, yes, they were axe murders, that took place, that we're going to talk a little bit more about here, is actually on the Register of Historic Places currently. Because it's been restored, and we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. So obviously the town itself has struggled over the years with the stigma of these axe murders and things of that sort. So as you're going to see, it was a travesty beyond words.
Okay.
So about 97 years ago, 98, 99, 100 years ago.
That's a long time.
A long time ago. Over 100 years ago now, right? Because it's, what year is this? 2017?
17.
And it happened in 1912? Yeah. So 105.
So over 100 years ago.
2 adults, 6 innocent children were found murdered in their beds.
2 adults and 6 children.
In their Villlisca farmhouse bed.
Wow.
So let's set the background a little bit on this. So I think what we're going to do, too, is throughout the discussion of the murders, we're going to interject with possible suspects along the way.
Right.
Because to this day, this axe murder remains unsolved.
Right. Not for lack of suspects, though, because we're going to get into that and talk a lot. This, and one of the things I think we're going to approach it as, and a lot of shows like ours have talked about the Villlisca axe murders, and they usually focus on a couple of things. They usually focus on the barbarity of the crimes, which was horrific and disgusting. But they also, because a lot of true crime shows kind of revel in the gore and stuff, and that's not really our thing. Or they focus on the paranormal aspects of the case, which it's a very famous, supposedly haunted location.
Right.
So they usually go one of those two things. I think we're approaching it kind of down the middle. We're going to talk about the murders themselves. We're going to talk about the suspects, a little bit about the investigation and stuff like that, and then we'll get into the paranormal stuff.
That's right. And as a disclaimer,
definitely.
we're going to talk about some horrific axe murders. So if you don't want your little children to hear this,
involving children too, which is it's not a funny thing.
you can just send them away to have them go do the milk dud challenge.
No, I wouldn't recommend they do the milk dud challenge unsupervised.
Unsupervised? No, don't do that.
Probably not a good idea.
We don't want any kids choking.
No.
So on June 9th, 1912, it was a warm, quiet evening in the Iowa town of Villlisca.
As probably most evenings were.
Sure, in June, sure. At around 9:30 p.m. at the local Presbyterian church, the children's program came to an end. That's
late for a children's program.
The family was taking part in. Well, there wasn't much going on. In the
entertainment.
Middle of the summer, around the summer solstice, the days are long, and so you get to stay out late.
All right.
So the people started on the way home. Everybody's going about their separate ways. People going back to their different farmhouses and whatever it is that they do in Iowa.
They go home.
Sarah Moore, who was the matriarch of the family that is going to be dispatched, was also the program coordinator of this event. And her family, as I stated, had begun to walk home. And she was joined by her husband, Josiah, which is a great name.
Josiah.
And her children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. So as you can see, there's a Herman Moore in this family.
Herman Moore.
Not the famous Detroit Lions wide receiver.
I was going to say, he's a wide receiver for the Detroit Lions.
He's pretty good, too.
Yeah.
Also, among them were 2 young female house guests, Lena and Ina Stillinger. They were, friends of the Moore children, and they decided they were going to have a sleepover at the Moore home that evening.
The name Stillinger is actually from a show called Oz that aired on HBO. It was about prison.
Yeah.
One of the main bad guys, a guy by the name of J.K. Simmons, whom I've met personally, by the way.
Oh.
Plug.
You and him share share some screen time.
We shared some... No, we didn't share screen time. We shared a van from the set area... from the staging area to the set area on the very famous movie that I was a part of.
Did you say anything to him?
No, he looked at me funny, though, like, what are you doing here? And then I actually stood next to him as we were reviewing some video, too, but I don't think he could pick me out of a lineup.
And you were awestruck by his...
No, he seemed like a okay dude, I guess.
He's jacked for an old guy.
He is. I've
seen pictures of him working out.
Yeah, he lost weight, but in Oz, he was a little chunker. Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to...
That's okay.
To digress.
So that was the 9th. On the next morning, June 10th, the horrific crime was discovered. And we'll talk more about the crime itself here in a second.
Yes.
But Mary Peckham, who was a neighbor of the Moore house...
That name sounds familiar, too.
Mary Peckham?
Peckham.
Oh, wasn't there a Mr. Peckham?
At our high school.
Yeah, he was kind of a strange character. Anyway, the Mrs. Mary Peckham lived next door. She was outside doing her morning chores, which, as you know, living in Iowa,
churning
with that consists of butter,
hanging laundry,
beating the laundry with a stick,
beating their children with sticks.
That's true too.
Things like that.
Things of that sort. She was out there. Something was unusual that she noticed. The Moore family had not been roused from their slumber.
Correct.
Nobody had gone over there. Nobody had.
And it bears explanation because, as you say, at that time in the farmhouse communities and stuff, people were out early doing chores, and it would be odd to not see somebody.
That's right.
Out and about.
That's right. She noticed the house was unusually still, so she found that to be strange, and she decided to go over there, check on the old Moore house, and see what the heck was going on over there. She knocked, didn't get any response, obviously, because there was some bad things that had occurred in there over the evening. But she was thinking that Sarah was under the weather for some reason. So she went to the barn and she let out the Moore chickens like any good Iowa neighbor would do.
Got to let out those chickens.
You got to let them out. Well, now, what happens if you don't let them out?
You got to feed them and stuff.
You got to feed them?
Otherwise, well, yeah, you got to feed the chickens. You can't just leave them cooped. You can't leave them cooped up.
Oh, my God.
That was good.
No, not really.
Anyway,
so Mary went back home after she let out the
chickens.
The flock. Would it be a flock of chickens?
Flock of chickens, I think.
And but she still something bothered her about the scene in general. So she felt like something was amiss. So she contacted Ross Moore, who's Josiah's brother, and Josiah is the patriarch of the home.
He went by Joe.
That's right.
So
Ross arrived at the home and met Mary, who was still trying to rouse somebody outside, and she banged and shouted, and Ross banged and shouted, and nobody would come to the door.
Uh-oh.
So obviously things are not looking good for the Moore family. So Ross, he knew they hid an extra key outside. He opened the door. He entered the front parlor with Mary. Still didn't see anyone. He continued to call out. Then he finally realized that maybe the family had gone on one of those fun-filled family Disney cruises and didn't tell anybody.
Six Flags, maybe?
Yeah, it could have been.
Something like that.
But it didn't happen, unfortunately. So he entered the first bedroom. It was one of the children's bedrooms, and the first thing he saw was two, unfortunately, small bloody bodies on the bed with darkened, stained sheets. And smartly, Ross ran back onto the porch, shouted for Mary to call the sheriff, the local,
yes, very smartly,
Villlisca, Iowa sheriff. So as that happens, the city marshal, a man by the name of Hank Horton, showed up.
Hank, that's a cool name for a
short time later.
He's a Hank.
Oh yeah, city marshal Hank Horton here.
That's actual audio from the time.
Yeah,
what
that
you
is.
just did, yeah.
That is. You didn't let it play out though. It was going to play out.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So they found two bodies downstairs. Those were the two house guests. Unfortunately, they were killed. That was Lena and Ina Stillinger. Lena was 12 and Ina was only 8 years old when she was killed. And the rest of the victims were found upstairs in their beds, and they were all killed with an axe.
Ew.
And not like you would think.
Well, that's true. That's what I always thought was an odd aspect of the case. But then there is actually reasons for it.
Sure. So you would think that an axe wielding psychopath would use the sharpened part of the blade,
right?
But unfortunately, he didn't.
Well, fortunately for him.
Unfortunately, I don't know which is worse, to go get
matter.
chopped to death or get bludgeoned to death,
right?
With the dull end of the axe.
Well, the reason supposedly given for that, I'm not sure if you're going to get into that later.
Oh, you can give it out if you want.
So supposedly, this is supposedly an indication of someone who has committed an axe murder before, because as you said, normal people wouldn't kill somebody with an axe, but a normal person would think that a person would use the sharp end.
Sure.
However, if you drive the sharp end of an axe into someone's head, it's actually very difficult to remove it from the head go and hit somebody else. So if you know you're going to have to hit multiple people, you use the dull end because you know that you can
easily recover each blow.
That's right, and continue on with your nasty work.
One of the interesting aspects of this, in terms of the evidence on the crime scene, were you could see on the ceiling, whereas on the backswing, the bladed part of the axe was coming up and leaving marks in the ceiling.
So he was swinging it over his head.
That's right.
We assume it was a man, but swinging it over their head.
That's correct.
And hitting the ceiling before coming down on the victims.
That's right. So Josiah Moore, the father, was 43. He perished, along with his wife, Sarah, who was 44, so clearly he liked older women. Herman Moore, like we stated, was 11. Catherine was 10. Boyd, 7. And Paul, 5. So a tragedy.
Nasty.
A tragedy, to say the least. Right. And some of the interesting notes about the scene, all the victims that were killed, their faces were all covered with their bedclothes.
Right.
So what does that tell you about, if we know nowadays about profiling a killer?
Well, from what I've read and from what I've seen on Criminal Minds, that covering the victim indicates some sort of remorse.
Remorse or shame.
Or shame.
Exactly.
Yes.
You're trying to keep the body from looking at you because you feel bad about it.
Well, that's the other aspect. See, that's completely different. So if covering the body or covering the face of the body indicates shame, in some people it may indicate that it not necessarily shame, but you just don't want them looking at you because there were some other weird aspects of the case that we're going to get into that would lead someone to believe that the killer had supernatural fears or beliefs in the occult.
So it was determined that the axe that was used was not the axe of the killer, that it actually belonged to Josiah Moore, and was found in the room with the Stillinger girls. So more than likely, they were the last two to be killed.
A weapon of opportunity.
That's correct. And it appeared that an attempt had been made to wipe it off for some reason. I don't know, like what the point of that would have been if there were bloody bodies all over the house. But there was also kind of a weird. I don't mean to laugh, but it's kind of bizarre. But there was a slab of bacon.
That's right.
Lying near the axe, wrapped in a dish towel.
Right. We're gonna get into. I have an interesting theory that I unearthed about the bacon.
About the bacon.
Yep.
And there was also a second slab of bacon found near the icebox. So I like bacon as much as the next guy.
Yep.
But
well, when we get into the suspects, we're going to come back to the bacon because there's a eerily disturbing thing related to that.
So clearly, even back in 1912, the news of the murders traveled quickly throughout Villlisca and all of Iowa. And for some reason, everyone and their brother began descending upon the scene. And the small police force had a difficult time trying to keep people out of the crime scene.
People were contaminating the crime scene.
Hundreds of people, they say, walked. And nowadays, obviously, this is completely foreign to us now. But excuse me. Oh, I had a.
What are you doing?
I had leftover breakfast. Have you ever taken? You get takeout at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Not takeout, but you take your leftovers home with you.
Yeah.
Do you ever do that for breakfast food?
No, not usually.
Don't do it.
Okay.
I did it yesterday. I went out.
You had leftover eggs, did you?
I went out to eat breakfast, and I
got
the eggs and the corned beef hash.
And this is what's happening.
So I ate that this morning before your arrival here today.
And you have gaseous odors.
Oh my God, the gastrointestinal distress.
Ew.
Anyway. So they had to call out the National Guard to come, try to keep order and maintain people out of the scene.
Hey, while you're mentioning National Guard, quick shout out to a listener of the show who informed us that they have just enlisted in the National Guard.
Oh.
And they are shipping out in a couple of months for their basic training. So you know who you are. Thank you for your commitment to the.
Are they actually getting on a ship, or are they flying there?
I think they're probably flying.
Yeah.
It doesn't going to the National Guard, not the Navy. Even if it was the Navy, they wouldn't ship anywhere. You just say shipping out. That's what you say.
Oh, all right. Anyway. I don't know that. I didn't know nothing about the military.
Nope.
So, obviously it seems crazy to think about how much of the scene would have been contaminated now at this point. But back then, there was no trace evidence like DNA or chemical testing or anything like that. They had to, detectives had to rely on their keen eye and cunning to solve these cases, which, you do on a daily basis.
Sure.
Trying to figure out what underwear you should wear in the morning.
That's correct. You have to do the sniff test. You have to do the test to determine how long it's been there. Because, if underwear is left soiled for so long, the smell disappears.
It does?
And you can wear it again.
Was it like biodegrades itself
yes,
into the atmosphere?
The bacteria eats itself, disappears, and you can wear the underwears again.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
So a lot of notes and clues were taken at the scene, but it was contaminated. There was some evidence that was lost.
Right.
So unfortunately, it still remains unsolved to this day. And one interesting note: the people that were coming through the scene to tour the scene were taking souvenirs with them.
That's gross.
Somebody supposedly took a piece of Josiah Moore's skull with them and kept it in a box. He was like a shopkeeper, and that was his little macabre way of getting people to come to the store. So there were no shortage of suspects. I think Mike wants to start maybe talk a little bit about some of the suspects here.
So here's some of the clues that were left behind, and the reason that the clues are important is because it leads to determining obviously who the suspect may be, but also because each one of them has something to do with potentially. Some of it may have to do with a motive. Some of it may have to do with the actions of the killer and their proclivities, if you like that word.
Ooh.
So here's some of the weird clues that were left behind. Jason mentioned the bacon, which I'm going to come back to. You know what a lamp chimney is?
A lamp chimney.
Yep.
I don't.
Okay, so back in the day, they had those oil lamps, like the kerosene oil lamp.
Sure.
So there was a glass bulby thing that goes over the flame to protect it. That's called the lamp chimney.
Ooh, bulbous.
So lamp chimneys were found removed from their lamps and found in weird places throughout the home, like behind dressers and stuff. So the killer, they assume it was the killer, did his dirty business by lamplight and then removed the chimneys before he did it, and no one is quite sure why somebody would do that.
And he hid them.
And
in
he hid them in random places. Yeah. Here's another weird one. A bowl of bloody water was found on the kitchen table where they assumed that the killer tried to wash up maybe a little bit.
Yeah, get rid of some of the blood off his hands.
And did it at the kitchen table. Yep. All of the mirrors in the home were covered with cloth. Now, it's suspected that the killer covered all the mirrors himself, either before or after the killings. You would think it would be after, because he wouldn't want anybody to wake up while he was... as you said, he killed everyone while they were in their beds.
So I wonder if there's is there like an occult theme
That's right.
to it?
So some people think that it was the killer was either could have been very superstitious. Back in the day, a lot of people thought that mirrors held some sort of occult properties or magical properties, or that people could see you through mirrors, ghosts appear in mirrors. People still think that to this day. I mean, we talked about scrying, and we talked about Bloody Mary and Candyman and stuff like that before.
So you would think it would have to have been after the fact, because...
You would think so.
More than likely, he was hiding out in the home.
Well, that's we're going to get into that, too. So there's a school of thought that the killer was actually, as you said, waiting in the home prior to the Moores arriving home. Or he could have been waiting outside, and we're going to get... There's a little bit of evidence about that may have occurred as well.
Sure.
So all the mirrors were covered with cloth. As you mentioned, the marks in the ceiling where the axe man or axe woman would have been swinging the axe, to get some power, like you're going to hit those carnival game hammer thingies.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, there's some evidence that it was a left-handed swinger. So like the angle of the blade indicated that it was a left-handed swinger.
I see.
And another one is that bloodhounds were brought in to do some tracking, and the bloodhounds got a scent supposedly from the killer, and traced the scent to a river not far from the home. So these are just some weird clues, and they're gonna come to fruition later as we talk about the suspects. So let's get into the suspects. You ready to do that?
How about before we get into that, because I see the line blinking here. I think Frank's calling in.
Oh no!
Yeah.
We gotta take Frank's call.
All right, we're gonna take Frank, and we're gonna get him on the horn here in just a second. Okay, so. On the line, I think we got Frank from the door store, and I want to make sure that he's okay. Frank, are you there? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, this is Frank.
And how you feeling, Frank? I know that you had a little bit of a tragedy there at the door store. Is everything okay?
I've seen better days, I have to be honest with you.
Say that again. You're a little muffled.
I've seen better days.
You've seen better days. So can you take us through the events of the downfall of the door store? What exactly happened that fateful day, those few weeks ago?
Well, I was sitting in my home, I don't live far from the door store. I was just right down the road, and I saw flames in the door store, and I said, hey, I gotta go save my doors, my doors is my life. So I pulled on my flippy floppies, and I ran down there, and the place was on fire. And so I said, I gotta put this fire out.
So you attempted to put the fire out. Now, was the whole building engulfed? Did you go inside? How did this come about?
I went inside, and you know what happened was I told people there's no paint on the door, no paint. No one listens to me, and I paint on the door, and the paint catches on fire. So there's the fire in the paint and the door, and I didn't have a fire extinguisher, so I tried peeing on the doors.
Oh,
I had to pee on them.
So that didn't. I'm assuming that didn't work out for you too well. Did you suffer any kind of injuries or anything as a result of this? Yeah,
my wee-wee.
You got a little burn on your wee-wee?
Not a little burn, big burn on the wee-wee.
Oh, so you overcooked your sausage is what you're telling me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but I was not successful in turning off the fire, and I woke up in the hospital, and the lovely nurses there were tending to my wee-wee, and there's worse places to be.
Okay, so you made it out. You're recovering from your injuries. The door store, is it a complete loss for you? What about your brothers Joe and Stan? Are they okay? Did they make it out okay?
Joe and Stan are pieces of poop. They have nothing to do with the door store anymore. No one will help me. Don't stand no more door store for you. You're banned. Banned from the door store forever.
No more door store. So do you think after you recoup from this, your injuries, are you going to rebuild the door store? Are you going to try a different line of work, a different business? What are your plans going forward, Frank, from the door store?
If I can't find enough doors, I'm going to become a male prostitute. I feel like I can do very well with the ladies. I know about courtship and how to be a gentleman, so I figure I'd be a good male prostitute.
So you'd be a male prostitute servicing ladies, but not other men, is what you're saying.
Well, beggars can't be choosers, so whoever wants to pay me.
All right, well, Frank, hey, listen, good luck going forward, and, if you need anything, don't hesitate to call us here at the Eon Project, and, if you decide to go the male escort route, let us know. We'll put another commercial on for you, and we'd be more than happy to promote your business.
And I find you a very attractive man, too, so thank you.
Thank you, and goodbye now. So that was Frank from the door store. Apparently, he has some severe injuries related to this fire.
I've met Frank, and he has a way with women.
Does he?
I tell you what.
I don't want to be judgmental by the sound of his voice. He doesn't sound like he would be an attractive man.
Well, it's there's a fetish for everyone. Let me just say that. And Frank has some sort of magnetism.
Ooh.
He magnetizes women.
Like animal magnetism, then?
They flow to him like the salmon of Capistrano.
Oh. Okay, so let's get into the suspects.
All right, so we're talking about the Villlisca Axe murders. We talked about the disgusting nature of the murders themselves.
Yep.
We talked about some of the nasty, weirdo clues that were left behind. So let's get into some of the possible suspects, because this investigation actually took many, many years. It was going on for a long time. And as you said before, today is still unsolved. But there's a few different camps, if you will,
yes,
of thought. And they all break down into a couple of different categories. So basically, let me get into a couple of the suspects. And as I'm talking about the suspects, I want you at home to think which one is the most likely one, and then we can kind of bandy about some theories, if you will. Okay. So the first suspect I'm going to talk about is a man named Andy Sawyer.
Oh.
Does that sound like a killer's name?
It sounds like somebody from a Mark Twain novel.
Andy Sawyer gets on the flatboat on the Mississippi.
His buckwheat was first rate. Oh.
Yeah, that... his potatoes are bully. Anyway, so Andy Sawyer. So right after the murders were discovered to have occurred, the townsfolk immediately started thinking that there was no way that anyone from the town could have possibly done such a thing. So what they started to do was look for people who didn't belong there, transients, hobos, and whatnot. So at this time in that area of the country, actually a lot of the country, there was a lot of transients bouncing from town to town looking for work.
Yep.
Mostly unskilled laborers, and they probably smelled really bad.
I'm sure they did.
Like a farm animal, like in July.
I always picture hobos being on a train eating beans.
They are. So when a man named Andy Sawyer arrived in a nearby town called Creston on the morning that the murders were discovered, he soon began to arouse suspicion.
Ooh.
He was hired on as a laborer for a railroad gig. Like he was a pile driver. He was driving piles.
Oh, that's a tough job.
You ever been pile drived by someone?
I have. Keith Garno pile drive me in 6th grade. Almost snapped my neck. He used to like Mr. Wonderful.
The pile driver was
a
great move.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Andy Sawyer was hired on as a pile driver. And he soon began to start weirding everybody out. First, he claimed that he was in Villlisca the night of the murders, and he took off when he heard about them because he didn't want to get rounded up as a suspect because he was a vagrant and all.
Yeah.
But he was obsessed with newspaper articles about the crime, and he kept asking anyone who would listen if the police had any leads. He would ask questions about, what they thought about it. And
so he had a lot of questions about the case.
A lot of questions about the case, which is kind of strange, in and of itself. And some other things that he did that really unnerved everybody. He used to sleep with an axe. With an axe.
You know what, though? I guess if you didn't have access to a firearm.
Sure.
Because I sleep with
I've
guns
slept
constantly.
with weapons before.
And you can never be too safe.
Yeah. So there's some other weird stuff he did, too. So the boss that hired him, for some reason, and it doesn't really say why, but for some reason, Andy Sawyer ended up on a little, car thing.
Yeah.
They were driving through town.
Yep.
And they ended up driving through Villlisca. This was soon after the crimes.
Uh-huh.
And Sawyer told the kid, he was a juvenile apparently, that he was going to show him where the man that killed the Moore family got out of town. He said that the man that did the job jumped over a manure box. And he pointed it out, which was about a block and a half away from the Moore house. And he showed him where the killer would have crossed the railroad tracks, and then they saw some footprints in the soggy ground north of the embankment. Mm-hmm. He then said, this is a quote from the kid. He then said for me to look on the other side of the car so he would show me where an old tree where he said the murderer stepped into the creek. Remember I said that the bloodhounds followed the trail.
That's right.
To the creek, to the river. So he effectively weirded everybody out to the point where he was actually turned over to the police by his boss as a suspect. So he looks pretty good for this crime, right?
Sure.
He's got information about it. He's interested in it. He's got an axe.
Yep.
All this stuff. Turns out he couldn't have been the killer because he had been arrested the night of the murders for vagrancy in another town, and he couldn't have made the trip to Villlisca in time to commit the killing.
So he had a rock-solid alibi then.
Because the alibi witness was the sheriff from the other town who said, I arrested that guy.
Yeah, he was already in custody.
So he was in custody. He could not have done it. Even though that looked pretty promising.
Yep.
Next suspect, man by the name of Joe Ricks. Joe Ricks is a cool name.
Oh, he sounds like a
Joe Ricks.
off the bench shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers
Now
back
batting,
in '83.
Number 25, Joe Ricks.
That's
25.
Yep.
Ricks.
Yep.
Anyway, so a woman. This is you have to go back to before the murders for this one. So a girl, actually, 16-year-old girl by the name of Miss Faye Van Gilder.
Ooh.
Faye Van Gilder. She was 16. You pervert.
Oh, anyway, that's legal.
She's dead now, I'm sure, because this was like a long time ago.
Oh, all right.
Anyway, so Miss Faye Van Gilder, the niece of the Moore family, of Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Moore, relayed that the day before the murder, she was accosted by a mysterious stranger who inquired where the home of the Moores was located.
Oh.
So that's weird, right?
That is strange.
Just somebody went, hey, where do the Moores live?
Somebody was looking for him.
Sure. So later, when she told Mrs. Moore of the occurrence, this was obviously before Mrs. Moore was murdered, so it must have been that day.
Yep.
Mrs. Moore stated that a similarly described man had been seen hanging around their property. So it's this weird guy asking where the Moores live, and then he's hanging around the property. That's pretty suspicious.
So to me, if this person was the killer, it sounds to me like they were specifically targeted. If he's asking for the name,
that's right. Where are the Moores?
Yeah.
Correct. That's your investigative mind.
Yeah.
So enter Joe Ricks. He was a man who was arrested in Monmouth, Illinois, soon after the murders because he stepped off a train wearing shoes covered with blood.
Ooh.
So authorities thought he might be the man that was seen in Villlisca the day before the murders asking the niece for directions to the home because he was similarly described. So actually, Faye Van Gilder was transported to Monmouth to ID the guy.
Oh.
So they trained her over there. That sounded bad. They put her on a train.
Did a little lineup action.
They brought her over there, and they presented the man, and she said, that's not him.
Oh.
So Joe also, he had a fairly good accounting of himself to the authorities about his whereabouts the day of the killing. So he didn't have a rock-solid alibi, but the eyewitness could not identify him.
Okay.
And he explained that his blood-stained shoes that he was wearing when he was arrested were obtained in a trade from a tramp. A tramp, I think, they mean hobo, not like a loose
risque woman?
No.
Okay.
So Joe Ricks effectively eliminated as a suspect.
Yep. Joe, go on.
So we're moving on. So those are two of the probably the least likely suspects, even though there was a couple of circumstantial things about each one of them that could have led to them being.
Now, you know what I find amazing about this whole thing? Obviously, as we stated earlier, it's 1912. The networking isn't as it is today.
Right.
So they had to do all of this by foot.
Yep.
By horseback, train,
by hook or by crook,
by keen sense,
keen detecting
to
skills.
Try to find this stuff out. It's amazing.
Sure. Okay. Probably the most creepy suspect. We're going to talk about him. His name was Reverend George Jacqueline Kelly.
Yes.
He was a traveling minister, which I don't know if that is still a profession. What's your profession, sir? I'm a traveling minister.
Praise be the Lord.
Woo. So he's a traveling minister. He was present in Villlisca the night of the murders. Yep. Here's creepy. He was seen observing the Moore and Sillinger children at the church service the evening of the murders. Okay, so he was at the children's program that you described before.
Yeah.
Multiple people saw him there. He was also seen leaving town the morning after the killings, very early in the morning.
I guess people were very disconcerted with his dark eyes.
He was weird looking. I saw a picture of him. He
was
a strange looking dude. So he was a weird dude, and here's some of the reasons that people think maybe he was the killer. He was a little guy, which he was 5'2", 120 pounds.
Oh, that's tiny.
That's small for a man. That's like a woman. It's a small woman.
Yeah.
So you figure out a man.
And he was a grown man. In his own way.
So he's not very large, and some people think that he was not large enough to kill 8 people in the manner that these people were killed, because it would take some physical strength to do that. You can't just bludgeon. It takes some work to do that.
Yep.
So, but he may have had crazy strength. You ever know somebody who had crazy strength?
I've dealt with that on many an occasion.
Somebody who's got crazy strength.
And you know what? You actually kind of underestimate people, too. You look at them, you're like, oh, this guy's, he's going to be easy to take down.
Yeah, yeah.
And next thing you know, he's tossing everyone about, and it's tough. Yeah.
I call it crazy strength. So, he was a known sexual deviant. And we're going to get into why that plays into this as well. he had been caught peeping on women in their homes 2 days before the murders in Villlisca.
Yeah.
So he was wandering around peeping on women.
This is a reverend now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
holy Lord.
Oh, yeah. So he was known to be a peeper. More deviancy. So this was 1914. So this is after the killings. He was living in Winter, South Dakota. Winter chicken dinner. He put an advertisement in a paper for a girl stenographer, quote unquote, to do some confidential work.
Oh.
He placed that ad in the Omaha World Herald, and he specified that the successful candidate must also be willing to pose as a model.
Oh, so the fetishes even go back that far, huh?
Sure.
Wow.
So when a young woman by the name of Jessamine Hodgson, with Jessamine, not too many Jessamines.
That sounds to me like a candidate.
Jessamine Hodgson responded to the ad. She received a return letter, and this actually was described by a judge in a court as being so obscene, lewd, lascivious, and filthy as to be offensive to this honorable court and improper to be spread upon the record. So it was so bad and sexually deviant.
He couldn't even put it in
He
the
couldn't
official...
even put it in the record. That's how bad it was.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
So, right. So amongst the milder instructions that Kelly told Hodgson that she would be required to type in the nude if she was going to work for him.
Man, this guy's got some game.
So that's sexual deviancy is obviously a part of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll get to that at the end of this. So anyway, so here's a story about Kelly. This is what people think if he was the killer that he did.
Right.
So he spotted the family in the church because he was a traveling minister, and he became obsessed with them because they had a number of females,
Sure.
of younger age, and he could possibly have been a pedophile. He had spied on the Moore household as they went to bed that evening. The idea that the killer had lain in wait for the Moores to go to sleep was supported by some evidence, because investigation revealed that there were some depressions in bales of hay stored in the family barn, and that nearby there was a knothole through which the murderer could have watched the house while reclining in comfort.
Ooh,
so he was sitting on the bales of hay watching the house.
Like an early 20th century glory hole.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we didn't mention earlier with relation to the forensic evidence, that Lena Stillinger, age 12, had been found wearing no underwear with her nightdress, this is gross, but her nightdress drawn up past her waist, that suggested that there was a sexual motive. However, the doctors found no evidence that there was any sexual assault. So they think that the killer may have positioned her in that manner and removed her garments and positioned her that way so that he could use it as a aid in doing something.
Self-satisfy.
And that's where the bacon comes in.
Oh.
So the bacon was greasy.
Oh, my God.
And he potentially used the grease as
I can't eat bacon anymore.
as a personal lubricant.
Oh, God.
So
That's awful.
More evidence against Kelly. So he had sent bloody clothing to a laundry in nearby Macedonia the day after the murder, which is not entirely taken in and of itself is not necessarily incriminating because people cut themselves all the time. Back then it was a rough life, so people always got blood on their clothes. But anyway, he sent bloody laundry to the laundry. Also, an elderly couple recalled meeting the preacher on an early morning train from Villlisca that day, the day that the murders were discovered, and he told them that gruesome murders had occurred in the town, which would be a hugely incriminating statement since the preacher had left Villlisca 3 hours before the killings were discovered. So he wouldn't have known that there were killings.
Unless he had firsthand knowledge.
It also emerged that Kelly had returned to Villlisca a week after the crimes and had shown great interest in the murders. He even posed as a Scotland Yard detective to obtain a tour of the Moore house. So he said he was from Scotland Yard investigating the crime, which no one from Scotland Yard would have been investigating the crime.
Sure.
But they let him in, and he wandered around the crime scene. And obviously that's strange behavior in and of itself. So Moore was arrested in 1917. He was repeatedly interrogated and eventually actually signed a confession to the murders, which was really creepy because he said, quote, "I killed the children upstairs first and the children downstairs last," which would be consistent with what you said earlier with the murder weapon being found in the final room.
Correct.
With the girls downstairs.
Yep.
So he also continued, "I knew God wanted me to do it in this way. Slay utterly came to mind," which is a quote from the Bible. Slay utterly. "As I picked up the axe, went into the house and killed them." So that's his confession. However,
Sure.
he later recanted his confession. He said it was beaten out of him by
Which is not out of the realm of possibility.
Correct. Overzealous detectives wanting to solve the case. Also, the elderly couple that claimed to have spoken with him the morning after the murders changed their story later and said that they weren't sure what he said or if it was even him.
I see.
With little left to hold him for the killings, they sent him to a grand jury, but the grand jury refused to indict him twice. So he went before Reverend Kelly went before two grand juries.
2 times.
And they did not indict him either time.
Okay.
So does that mean he didn't do it? No. That just means that they weren't able to convict him based on evidence.
Yep.
So to this point, Reverend Kelly probably seems like the most likely suspect, wouldn't you think?
Well, he fits the mold.
Sure.
However, as we stated earlier, if there was a person that was inquiring about the Moore home, so that's
Right.
why it's interesting, because there's so many different suspects.
There's a lot of different
each
things.
one with their own motives.
Right.
Yeah.
And the one with the worst motive is next. Are you ready for that one?
I'm ready.
Okay, man by the name of Frank Jones.
Yep.
To some,
Not
the
our
most
Frank from Frank the Door Store.
No. Frank from the Door Store would never hurt a fly.
Okay.
Well, he might. Anyway, so to some people, Frank Jones would be the most unlikely, and to some, the most likely, depending on who you ask, because he was a state senator and a powerful local businessman. Mm-hmm. He may have had a couple of beefs with Joe Moore, the patriarch of the Moore family, and some say that he may have hired someone to commit the murders, to kill Joe and the rest of the family to cover up the crime. For one, Joe Moore used to work for Frank Jones as a salesman in his farm equipment business. So Joe Moore, the father, worked for Frank Jones. After many years of being a top salesman, there was word that Joe Moore demanded a raise. I demand a raise. That was actual audio.
That's what he said.
I demand a raise.
That's how they used to do it.
That's right. I demand a raise from you, sir. So Frank Jones refused, prompting Joe to quit. Not only did he quit, Joe Moore opened up his own farm equipment business across town as a competitor and took some high-value clients with him. So Frank had a financial motive to be pissed at Joe Moore.
Wasn't the John Deere company involved?
That's correct.
In this?
John Deere was the number one client,
right.
and Joe Moore left with them.
He took the John
Deere
Deere
business.
account.
That's right.
Nothing runs like a deer.
No. Even worse than that, that's bad enough, and to some people that would be enough motive to murder. But even worse, Joe Moore is thought to have been romantically involved with Frank Jones's daughter-in-law.
Oh.
Okay, this is a weird one too. So supposedly Frank Jones's daughter-in-law was said to be a smoke show. I don't know.
She was rather bully.
She was bully. She had heavy legs. Anyway, so she was said to be a smoke show, and she was also known to be having multiple affairs with different married men about town.
Oh, man.
Which was a fact confirmed by local operators. Because, back in the day, you couldn't just call somebody.
No.
You had to ask, you pick up the phone, and then someone would go, hello, this is the operator. Yep. And then they would say, connect me with Frank Jones's house.
Frank Jones 1273.
And then they would put it in there.
Put it through.
What most people don't know is that the operators could hear what was going on.
They would listen to everything.
They could listen to those conversations.
Oh, that'd be a cool job. I'd love that.
It's like voyeuristic. So anyway, the telephone operators knew that this woman was a philanderer and was cheating on her husband. So Joe Moore was cuckolding Frank Jones' son.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
He was Frank Jones' son involved?
Well, that's the thing. So Joe Moore was cuckolding him. You like that word? Cuckold?
Well, he would have to be participated. That's what that means.
No. Joe Moore was cuckolding the son. So
right.
The guy's son.
I know, but the son would have to be in the room as this is taking place.
No.
That's what that means.
No. That's not what that means. That just means that a man whose wife cheats on him is a cuckold.
No,
it doesn't necessarily mean you're there.
I thought cuckolding was...
No, you don't actually have to be
You're
there.
with somebody else's wife and the husband is sitting in the corner of the room watching.
No, that's a cuckolding fetish.
Oh.
That's if you like that.
Oh.
If you don't like it and you don't know what's going on, you're still a cuckold.
Oh, you just revealed something.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
So
Clarify that for me.
So, that's a pretty strong motive, too. So, a private detective from the Burns Detective Agency, which is actually still around to this day, they run security guard businesses, which they're not the best in the world. Anyway, so a detective from the Burns Detective Agency was hired by a Moore relative to investigate the murders and came up with a theory that Frank Jones hired a man by the name of William Blackie Mansfield. Blackie was his nickname.
Yep, he's the killer.
Name of Blackie, why, because of his nickname?
Yeah, Blackie Mansfield.
Blackie Mansfield. To commit the murders, and even got a grand jury convened. Witnesses claim that Jones was seen conspiring with other men outside the Moore home on the day of the murders, one of them potentially Blackie Mansfield.
There's a lot that goes on outside the Moore home.
Yeah, lots of things going on. Oh, there's people conspiring, people walking around asking
people peeking in windows,
directions
looking
into
in
my
glory
house.
holes, all kinds of stuff.
What the heck's going on here? So, but the case actually fell through when Mansfield had a solid alibi. So, when they couldn't pin so supposedly he didn't commit the murders himself because he was an older man. He had this guy supposedly do it, but he had an alibi. The case fell through, but Frank Jones's political career was ruined and his name dragged through the mud. Everybody thought he had something to do with the murder.
Wasn't Mansfield an early cocaine addict as well?
I didn't see that, but potentially.
Oh.
So you obviously saw that.
I saw that somewhere.
So Frank Jones had a couple of reasons to kill Moore. Not necessarily the family, but, he was pissed at Joe.
Sure.
So to the point where he would kill everybody? I don't know. That seems kind of far-fetched to me.
Well, maybe Mansfield, he just took it a little bit too far.
It could have been.
Because I believe...
Hitmen tend to do that.
Yeah, I think that he was known for other murders that had taken place. He
was a suspect in some other murders as well. He was not a good guy. William Mansfield was not a good guy.
Definitely not.
So anyway, So that's the Frank Jones theory. Now, more than likely, the next theory is probably the most realistic.
And this is the last suspect that you're going to talk about?
Well, yes, in a manner of speaking.
And this is the most realistic of them all.
To me, it is.
Plausible, I should say.
An unknown serial killer was the culprit.
Weren't there a series of axe murders at the time?
That's correct. So many believe that the Villlisca killer was a traveling serial killer, as similar crimes took place in the vicinity of railroad tracks all around the country at the same time, the same time. So it would be easy for a demented hobo to jump off the railroad car, kill some folk, jump back on the train, eat his hobo beans, and ride the rails away from town. So, adding to the mystery, here's some other creepy stuff that happened around that same time. Some other murders in different states around the same time had the same weird characteristics of the Villlisca case.
Yep.
Covering mirrors, covering the bodies, using an axe. There was some other things. So, and these murders took place in as I said, different areas of the country, but along railroad lines, because that was a main form of transportation between cities at the time. But if the killer, here's a but though. But if the killer was a transient and a hobo, how would he have known to target the Moore family specifically? How did he know that by low light? And because back in the day, nobody had electricity, there weren't lights blazing all night long. So by low light, you had to find a strange home, maneuver around the strange home, not wake anybody up, find the bedroom of the Moore adults and kill them first because they were upstairs.
Of course.
So you would have had to know where they slept if you're going to kill them first, unless he was just wandering around the house for long periods of time. So how would that happen? But also the same night in Villlisca, a telephone operator, that was her job, she wasn't doing it at the time, heard footsteps outside of her door in the middle of the night, and someone tried to open her locked door, and then they escaped. There was another family in the area that saw someone in their home, a shadowy figure. They woke up, and the person escaped out of a window.
Oh.
So you have a couple of things. What the heck is going on there? There's a lot of different theories. So to me, a traveling serial killer is probably the most likely suspect because of similar murders in other areas. But like I said, there's a couple of weird inconsistencies. Who was the person that was asking for the Moore house specifically?
Right.
And seen lurking outside their property? Who was that guy? Who were the people that were going into other homes at the same time?
Right. It's like I said, it's 1912. It's Iowa. Not a whole lot going on.
Yep.
So you think about it now, right? You go, say it's a Saturday night. You go out on the town. There's things to do. You go to the local drinking establishment. You go dancing. You go to the wiener joint afterwards. There's things to do.
The wiener joint, is that what you call it?
Yep. Back in the day, there wasn't really much going on. So you know what? If you're a creepy dude, where are you gonna go? You're just gonna wander around the cornfields,
look at people's windows,
peeking in windows, sneaking in people's homes.
You used to do that, didn't you? You used to peek in people's windows.
No, but I could see how it would be arousing for some.
You could.
Yeah,
sure. So anyway, that's the actual murders, the investigation, the suspects. We kind of went over the details of that, and it remains unsolved to this day. But there's some after effects of the murders, and those continue to today as well.
Absolutely. And as we know, with any seriously tragic event, emotionally distressing event, that's why we talk about these things on this I said television.
It would be cool if it was a television show. Maybe that was a foreshadowing.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Television one day.
We need to be on television. We're some entertaining dudes. Man.
Entertaining. We're attractive.
Very attractive.
We're good looking.
Incredibly handsome.
We're svelte,
suave.
We're large.
Yeah.
In the right areas.
Yep. Which is our heads, our brains. Our brains are very large.
Perfect for TV.
Yep.
But anyway, so just like much like the Amityville case and other cases like this, where and that was what we were talking about earlier, a parallel to the Amityville case. If you remember, going back when we were talking about this, the murders that took place there at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, many people were killed by a firearm, right?
Yes.
And nobody seemed to really get out of the bed that much.
Correct.
So the same kind of thing happened here. I mean, if you're in your home and people are being bludgeoned to death with an axe,
you would hear that probably.
Don't you think you'd hear that and you'd kind of wake up maybe?
I do, but I'm a very light sleeper. I would hear a mouse fart and wake up.
So the same kind of thing happened there. Maybe some sort of weird sleep paralysis that overtook the whole family, fear, paranoia. Who knows? Who knows what kept those people asleep like the Amityville case? But,
a slight deviation would be that in the Villlisca case, all of them were younger children than the Amityville case. Those are older kids.
Oh, they were roughly, there were a couple older kids.
There's a couple of them teenagers.
But anyway, so with that tragedy comes the association that possibly paranormal activity is rooted and taken hold in the home. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. As we said, an emotionally tragic event, the energy can very well linger and manifest. So let's talk a little bit about some of the haunting evidence. So I'm going to fast forward to 1994 for a second, and then we'll backtrack here in a minute.
1994 was a good year.
It was a good year.
Yep.
So 94, obviously, the house is old at this point. It was in terrible condition, and was, believe it or not, was getting ready to be torn down. However, in steps Darwin and Martha Lynn.
Darwin.
They were some, a married couple. I believe that they still own the home. They basically wanted to restore the house to its original condition at the time of the 1912 murders. One, to kind of make it like a living museum. Essentially, people could come and tour it. They could hear the story of, see how the Moors lived back then, or people in general lived back then in Iowa, and to offer tours of the home and, talk about maybe some activity, the paranormal activity that has been going on there. So they restored everything, including the outhouse and the chicken coop that we talked about earlier as well.
Nice.
So the original chicken coop. And, there's not really enough outhouses in use today, if you ask me.
No, there needs to be more outhouses.
So as we said, the house was completely restored. And they let people do the tours and the overnight
open for business.
Yeah, and you can stay overnight there.
That sounds like a fun
things
time.
like that. So a Des Moines disc jockey stayed in the house and awoke to hear children's voices, but no children were present. So he did his little shtick, his little DJ thing where he stayed overnight.
Yeah, the time is 7:55. Hope you're not on the highway. Whoa, look at that traffic. It's gonna take forever to get to work today. Woo!
Oh man, I think you have a
sorry.
That's your second calling there.
Yeah.
There's been many a report of falling lamps, moving objects. Most scary, I think, is like children laughing.
Yeah, children laughing is always scary.
I think EVPs of the children are the most creepy.
Yeah.
There's also been a lot of video and photographic anomalies that have been caught that you could go online and see. And actually, believe it or not, the stories go back to the 1930s when a young couple named Homer and Bonnie Rittner moved into the house.
That's a cool name.
And Bonnie, unfortunately for her, began hearing noises at night, which kind of frightened her. And night after night, she began seeing the image of an axe at the end of the bed.
That's creepy.
So can you imagine?
No, I wouldn't stay there
ever
again. No.
Between the years 1963 and 71, another family lived in the house that consisted of two young girls and their parents. The father was a truck driver, and obviously being a truck driver, he'd be gone often. And the girls would often awake to sounds of children sobbing and crying. So it seems to me like the children haunting theme is kind of present here on this thing, being that they were the most people that were killed there.
Right.
The girl's father never really believed the girls, unfortunately for him, until one night while sharpening his pocket knife, which he often did, it flew out of his hand and stabbed him in the palm, unexplainedly.
I think he probably did that himself.
Maybe he was just practicing his knife throwing.
He probably had a few adult beverages before that.
So, and apparently the haunting activity began to pick up when the renovations began. And maybe you can explain that a little bit.
Sure. So there's an old standing paranormal theory that when a home or dwelling or anything is being renovated, it's a trigger for paranormal activity to start, because if there are spirits that are attached to the property, they're angry that you're altering it, or you're disturbing some sort of peace that's been going on there, and that leads to paranormal activity.
Maybe he's stirring up the restless spirit of Bob Vila in his home renovations.
This old house. I'm Bob Vila.
Is he still alive, you think?
I think so. He was a hardy individual.
Yeah, no, he was a good host. I liked that show.
Everybody liked This Old House.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody watched it outside of New England, though.
No, it's made it pretty big now. It's I think it's nationwide.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
What was the name of the carpenter guy that was his
That
sidekick?
was Norm Abrams.
Norm Abrams.
He's the master carpenter.
That's correct.
He's guy's amazing. He can build anything.
He can.
So he's definitely an original, to say the least.
That's where I learned about a wet saw. You know what a wet saw is?
I know what a wet saw is.
Yeah, that's how I learned about it. Wet saw.
Oh yeah.
That's a wet saw.
Ooh. So as you can see, like all tragic events that occur in a home, haunting sites, it's just the site of an emotionally tragic event that occurs, and the energy lingers. It manifests. It attaches itself to different locations and things of that sort. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, we talked many weeks ago about Grandma Betty's haunted place
in Indiana.
In Indiana, that's correct. So I got some more recent pictures of Grandma Betty's place that were sent to me yesterday, as a matter of fact. talk about this could be the Villlisca home, an old creepy house to say the least.
Was there anything in the pictures of a paranormal nature?
There's some possible faces and windows and things.
Oh.
So what I can do is I can post those up online here shortly as well.
That'd be good.
So just to recap, the Villlisca case, an interesting case. It's a famous axe murder, which in turn turned into a haunting at this time. So you can go online, you can still go there, you can still stay there the night.
I'm more interested in the crime itself, and probably because it's not it's an unsolved crime.
Sure.
So I don't know. I feel like the paranormal aspect of it is just people that are capitalizing on a previous tragedy.
It's possible. I mean, you always have to kind of look at things from a skeptical point of view. But another famous axe case that people have talked about, of course, is the Lizzie Borden case.
Yes.
Which maybe we can delve into a little bit more too.
Yeah,
at
we
some
could do
point.
We could do a show.
But that one too was interesting in the sense that she was tried and acquitted.
Right. Although most people think she did it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's possible.
Actually, they have a movie that's coming out soon. If it's not out already, it's about Lizzie Borden.
Is it going to be like one of these third-rate kind of low-budget films?
No, it's got a star attached. I don't remember who it is, but it's somebody.
I'm surprised it took them this long to make that movie.
Yeah, there's probably been some direct to TV movies.
That's not too far from us here in Fall River, so maybe we could do like a little field trip down there, or even spend the night.
I don't want to spend the night there.
Why not?
I don't want to spend the night with you in general.
Well, we would be in separate rooms.
Oh, separate rooms. Okay.
Yeah, but then I would sneak into your room.
Yeah, I'd have to have a solid lock on my door because you're deviant.
Oh, no,
George Kelly.
I'm not that kind of deviant.
No.
But anyway, so that's the Villlisca case. That's
interesting.
You can read more about it online.
It's creepy when you read a lot of, and we didn't get into it in great detail. There's been a lot of people who have, but I mean, there's stuff that we didn't talk about that you could learn about the different suspects, about the crime scene and stuff. It's just a creepy case.
There are some photographs as well, and things of that sort, and supposedly some online paranormal evidence as well that you can take a look at. Take that with a grain of salt.
Did ghost hunters go there? The ghost hunter team?
I'm not quite sure. I
think they did.
I don't recall that.
One of them did. Either Ghost Adventures or Ghost Adventures, Ghost Brothers, Ghost Posse,
Ghost third cousins on your mother's side,
Ghost Conglomerate.
Oh,
yeah, they all been there.
Yep.
So anyway,
what do you have? Any parting thoughts for me?
Just no parting thoughts. I'm just happy to be here, man.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm happy to be here with all the listening audience.
Well, one thing I did want to mention.
Oh, okay.
Is that the website is currently being revamped.
Okay.
So it is not in operation right now, but you can still get a hold of us by emailing us directly at TheEoNProject. That's TheEoNProject at yahoo.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter.
That's correct.
And we would love to hear from you. Let us know if you'd like the show. Give us a review on iTunes or on Podbean or however you listen to the program. Those reviews actually do help. They elevate the status of the show so that more people can find it and we can keep doing the show.
That's right. So, we don't know what the heck we're talking about next week.
Nope, we'll find out.
We'll discuss that Saturday night over a bunch of... Friday night. Friday, I should say. Historic day in the history of the world.
Yes, November 10th.
November 10th. If you don't know what that is, too bad for you.
November 10th is a very significant annual celebration of birth for a group of people.
That's correct.
You should look it up.
They were birthed and brought forth into the world from
set forth upon the
Tun
world.
Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1775. And if you know what we're talking about, look it up.
Pour one out for your homies.
So just remember, the truth exists, but you don't.